Story 1. I've been a professional video editor for the last 12 years and have never gone more than a week without a job. I've made content for many of the country's biggest brands and have a solid resume. For the first time in my life, I've been submitting resumes every single day for the last 4 months and have not had one interview. It's tough out there right now. Fingers crossed my luck takes a turn. Story 2. According to a video I just watched, multi-level marketing is a good thing. Story 3. It's so crazy to read all these comments and personally remember a time when going to the mall, movies, bowling, arcades, restaurants, museums, art fairs, and so on were all regular activities. People were excited for Teacher Celebration Week because they loved their teacher so much and couldn't wait to give them their gift, some homemade. Riding your bikes around with your friends to sit in a field somewhere and talk was the highlight of your day after school. I kind of wish the world would just slow down. Story 4. Trucking. I have been in transportation for 36 years, and you would be scared to drive on the same road if you met some of these truck drivers. Up until COVID-19, you would have a bad driver come through once in a while. Now it's rare to have a driver that understands basic instructions. How are they passing driver tests? I try to stay off the freeways whenever possible. Story 5. Live music. People see big concerts happening and assume live music is doing as well as it always has. Not true. Small and medium-sized venues are struggling. Local bands are struggling, and small to medium-sized touring acts are struggling. People don't seek out live music like they did 20 years ago. Small live music bars with built-in crowds of regulars who would always show up to check out the band of the week used to be commonplace. Today, they are very rare. Story 6. Veterinary medicine. I just got out. The average career is about 5 to 10 years before leaving for technicians and assistants and so on. Emotionally, it's taxing not just because you're dealing with dying dogs every single day, but because management comprises business people nowadays who don't know or care about medicine and blame you for not hitting quotas or overspending on supplies or overtime. Pay is low, especially considering student loans taken on to be a doctor or have a specialty. Not enough people are going into the field for these reasons, and those who are don't stay. Suicide rates are some of the highest by trade. We all know someone who has taken their own life, including me, and I don't know any veterinary medicine worker who isn't in therapy, self-medicating with alcohol, getting too numb to feel anymore with cannabis, or a mix of all three. This is just a brief list of problems. Edits for numbers. Story 7. Musicians and artists, the middle class in general, has been gutted over the last 20 years, and they were the first line of support for independent artists. Many smaller mom-and-pop venues were crushed during COVID and either transitioned away from live music or closed entirely. You will still see a lot of people pushing their craft, but working-class full-time artists in every medium have almost disappeared. Story 8. The nightlife industry is facing challenges. Bars and clubs in cities are declining due to the high cost of living, which affects disposable income for social activities. Despite this, there has never been as many DJs or aspiring DJs as there are now. London, a pillar for electronic music, lost 37% of its clubs in the past 4 years. Many people are also simply getting older and are reluctant to acknowledge it. Story 9. The alcohol business. The craft beer bubble burst, and wine is failing to capture any young demographic. Younger demographics tend to drink less for health reasons, cost reasons, and many just prefer marijuana instead. The biggest alcohol distributor in the country just laid off around 3,500 people across the country. Yes, people will always drink, but the worse the economy gets, the more people will trade down to the cheap stuff. Story 10. Veterinary. On top of being notoriously low pay and high burnout, the hedge funds discovered us in the last 5 years. 90% of the local clinics in my area sold to corporate, and workers and clients are increasingly displeased. Corporates tried to push a human healthcare model because that works so well, increasing prices, block scheduling so veterinarians see fewer patients in a day, and pushing insurance. Insurance is a great idea for emergencies, but last week nationwide, the #1 pet insurer dropped 100,000 clients from their coverage. So now we have a bunch of hedge funders trying to run medicine like a retail or food business. You cannot and keep it ethical. Medical businesses should never be run like retail businesses, making people dependent on insurance only for insurances to act like a business and drop policies for not being profitable. in a field with no protections and very unlikely to ever get protections. I literally save lives. I do the job of a nurse, a certified nursing assistant, a phlebotomist, a dental hygienist, a radiologic technologist, an ultrasound technologist, a pharmacist, a surgical technologist, a groomer, a behaviorist, and a janitor every day, and I could make more at Walmart. Story 11. The auto industry really did it to themselves. There is too much inventory, and no one is buying the high-end trucks because they are too pricey. I work for a plant that makes parts for the big three, and we've been barely working 4 days a week, whereas pre-pandemic we were working 6 or 7 days. Story 12. Public Works, we are all severely understaffed, and any applications we receive are highly unqualified for the work. When roads, bridges, drainage, and snow maintenance fail in the near future, there won't be anyone to help. Story 13. Every trade. They really think they can pay people $13 to $15 an hour when the cheapest one-bedroom not in a bad area is $1,200 to $1,400 a month. 2-year degree, $8,000 worth of tools to get started in mine. The experienced workers wonder why the new guys quit when they get paid flat rate and you're hiding their tools to mess with them at work. This next generation wants to be paid a livable wage, not be abused, and to come to work. I'm all for them. Shops charge $200 a flat rate hour for jobs and pay these guys $15 to $30. It's abysmal. They can afford to pay people what they are worth. Every business can. Story 14. Since COVID, hospitality, where I worked, used to be packed all weekend. Now, we have nights on the weekend where we have more staff than customers. We used to never leave before midnight. Now we can be cleaning by 10 and having our after-shift drinks by 11. I've been working at my place for 5 years now, except for COVID, obviously. This summer was the least busy I've ever seen it. Story 15. Local television news. The bottom is about to drop out of the entire television industry. The year 2025 is going to be the year of the broadcast television apocalypse. Story 16. If the shareholders knew that the American manufacturer's answer to China is basically bigger infotainment displays, their stocks would collapse. Story 17. In the United States, retail pharmacies are struggling. There is pressure from big box retailers like Walmart and Target. Pressure from online merchants like Amazon. Pressure from decreased insurance reimbursements for prescriptions. Losses due to high theft. Check the stocks of CVS, Rite Aid, or Walgreens if you do not believe me. Story 18. Journalism. The world's press is now just basically 3 prompt engineers and a premium ChatGPT account. Serious concerns ought to be raised about the well-being of the Fourth Estate. Story 19. The television industry all over the world. Lots of reasons why and how, but mainly television was always financed by advertisers. And they are moving to online. Broadcast television will be talked about like the fax machine or tapes in less than 5 years. Yes, I worked in television. I am packing up my last things today and tomorrow after having had to close down my company, which was internationally represented, after 15 years. Story 20. Hollywood. There was the writer's strike, but the year after the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, which is basically everyone else who is not a writer, producer, or actor, was up for negotiation. No one wanted to make anything that year because you could end up in trouble after a second strike. It never happened, but a lot of us have been out of work for 2 years now. Let me say again, we aren't the writers and producers. Think of the carpenters, sound, color, costumes, etc. Story 21. I'm a former telecommunications worker, building the backbone copper and fiber optic networks from central offices to the home and all points in between. My career was erased by big corporations hiring lowest bidder contractors. They, for the most part, have low skill and even less concern for proper maintenance of facilities. I watched my industry take pride in building things right, with proper maintenance and service to customers, turn to absolute neglect. The industry itself may not be struggling due to the obscene prices we pay for communication services. But as a career option, don't waste your time. Story 22. The hair industry is starting to really suffer as the cost of supplies and living go up, yet wages aren't increasing. Yes, people always need their hair cut, but root touch-ups are our bread and butter, and people can't afford to get it done anymore. I got out of the industry a few years ago, but my fellow stylists are really suffering. People just can't afford to get their hair done anymore. Story 23. One industry that is struggling more than people think is the publishing industry, especially print media. With the rise of digital content, social media, and free online news, traditional newspapers and magazines are finding it harder to compete. Print circulation is declining, and advertising revenue has shifted toward digital platforms like Google and Facebook. Even with digital adaptations, the industry is dealing with shrinking profits, layoffs, and a struggle to balance quality journalism with the demand for quicker, more sensational content. It is a tough time for many publications trying to survive in a world where people want instant access to everything. Story 24. It may be a surprise, but much of the technology industry is in a failing spot or at least on the decline. Especially in commodity technologies such as application development and web development, people just do not want to spend money right now. In larger technology companies, we have seen huge layoffs year over year, such as those at Google and Intel. Additionally, everybody and their brother wants their own artificial intelligence-focused technology startup. So the mid-sized companies' clients are being scalped. The artificial intelligence bubble is likely to burst soon, though maybe not as spectacularly as the dot-com bubble. We are going to see many places that are pushing artificial intelligence as a trend go out of business. The silver lining is that the information technology side of technology is stronger than ever, with companies needing continued support in the digital age. Story 25. I worked in the TV and film industry. Production is down 7% worldwide. North American production hubs such as Los Angeles, New York, New Mexico, Atlanta, Toronto, and Vancouver have been dead since the strikes of 2023. Fewer commercials are being shot as advertisers turn to influencers to sell their products. Streaming does not make money, linear TV is dying, and the box office is literally hit or miss, which is why it's a string of reboots and sequels. Studios are afraid to spend big on new intellectual property only to have it fail, so they go with what's familiar. People claim they want original content and then either don't go see it or it gets review bombed for something unimportant and never gets a chance. Hundreds of thousands of industry tradespeople like me, who aren't millionaires, have been out of work for over a year, and no one cares if we lose our jobs, and many are rooting for it. Story 26. Childcare. I never realized how bad it was until I was presented with an opportunity to watch Make a Circle, which is a documentary based on the struggles child care providers have faced, especially in recent years, and the difficulties they faced during the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't have kids, but I think we should be doing more for them than we have been. Children are our future. The people who care for them shouldn't be earning less than minimum wage with no paid leave, health care, or retirement. Story 27. I saw a couple of interviews with a few actors. All of them said something along the lines of, "There's so much free adult content out there that it's hard to sell people new material. And you make more money on subscription-based platforms than you do shooting scenes with a professional studio." Story 28. It's not a financial struggle, but antibiotics are getting more ineffective due to stronger bacteria surviving as we use more and more antibiotics. There is a big possibility that in the next 50 years, antibiotics may become useless as treatment. Story 29. Medical. We are in a burnout epidemic, and we may see total system collapse depending on what the incoming administration does. Profiteering in medicine is driving all the issues: understaffing, overcrowding, exorbitant executive pay, returns expected by shareholders, denied insurance claims, medical school debt. It's a house of cards. Story 30. This one's a bit niche, but being a luthier in the United States is about to get a whole lot more expensive if those tariffs end up being put in place. Pretty much every kind of wood used on violins, guitars, and other adjacent instruments is imported, not to mention all the tools you need. If all goes well, I'll be making and repairing violins professionally after I graduate in spring, which is pretty cool. I picked a bad time to get into the field, though at least there's high demand for it. Story 31. Animation. You would think that Inside Out 2 making $1.6 billion at the box office would be a good sign, but animation workers in the United States and around the world are overworked, underpaid, and are in danger of losing their jobs to mergers, outsourcing, and eventually artificial intelligence. Even though animated films and television series kept the entire film industry afloat during the pandemic, animation workers have gotten the shaft from these greedy studios. For your information, the Animation Guild is currently negotiating with the United States studios for fair wages, protections against artificial intelligence and outsourcing, and better working conditions. Please use the hashtag #StandWithAnimation wherever you can to show support. Story 32. The better question is, what industry is not struggling? The answer is investment companies like Blackstone, which force companies to struggle by means of stockholder demands, manipulation, and expendable chief executive officer replacements.